Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Sam, and this is The Lonely Chapter, a show where we speak to interesting people, finding out their stories, discovering what motivates them, whilst also learning from their highs and their lows. Today, we are learning from Jayac. He's the founder of Red Pigeon Media and also the man behind the TikTok account Whiskey Amateur. Expect to find out what appeals to Jayac about the media industry, why you should be using Reels and TikTok for your business, and what whiskies he would recommend for people looking to get started. Thank you for listening. This one was made for your enjoyment. Hi, firstly, thank you so much for coming on today. I want to start off with media. So obviously you've got the Red Pigeon Media that we spoke about in the intro. What first drew you to media?
Do you know what? I kind of went into it in a really roundabout way. I actually studied at university to be a therapeutic radiographer. So if you get cancer treatment at the time, I could plan and treat that. But I actually didn't get the job that I wanted in my local hospital. So I went away traveling for a while, went away, found myself. I had this plan for a while when I was studying, but I spent some time with my cousin who lives in California in America, and he actually studied cinematography out there, and that's what he did. And we were just there chilling, and he was like, I've got a job next week. It's on a music video. We need an extra spare pair of hands. Like, would you jump in? And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, don't worry. He's like, it's not like Jay-Z or anything like that. He was like, you just need to stand there. When they call, press the button, you press the button and just help out. And I did it and just loved it. I just loved it. And what I did was throughout my travels, I had a little GoPro, and this was the first ever GoPro. It was like, it cost me 90 quid. And I just filmed everything. And I filmed, and funny enough, actually not many people know this, but I actually had a travel vlog, where I used to upload these videos to YouTube of my travels around, and just loved it. Just loved the whole filming, the editing side of things. It was just loads of fun. So when I was out there, I helped out my cousin. He gave me some money, and I bought my first camera. So when I was out there in California, I bought my first camera. It was just a really cheap sort of Canon camera, but to me, it was a lot of money. I think it probably cost me like £300 or something like that. But when you're traveling, to put that money on there, it's quite a lot. And yeah, just really enjoyed it. So when I came back to the UK, I probably was away. I was in and out of the country for the space of probably about 2 years, I want to say. And I met so many people across my travels from all ages, different industries, different people. And I just came to realize that actually there's just so much out there in terms of like jobs. I think when you go to school and you go to college, you're kind of taught that there's a certain segment of jobs you do. You can work in a bank, you can be a lawyer, you can be a doctor, a fireman, policeman, things like that. But actually, there's like a whole scope of jobs out there that you just never hear about. And being out and about kind of inspired me when I came back, and I was like, this might kind of sound a bit selfish, but when working as a radiographer in the NHS, you kind of go in a band system. Mm-hmm. So every year you kind of progress at a steady rate. And throughout my degree, I actually had quite a lot of experience throughout hospitals on placement. And it sounds quite bad, but you come to experience different departments, and you realize that there's some people here that just really shouldn't be here. They don't have the passion for it. They don't care, but they progress at the same rate as you. They'll probably get the same opportunities that you do because it's a government-backed job. And I believe in my ability. I think that I'm a really hard worker, and I hate the word hustler, but I'm a grinder. I'll put myself out there. If I need to get it done, I'll make myself do it. Grafter, exactly. So I actually didn't go to work in hospital when I came back, and I went to go work for a company that specialized in, they don't offer it anymore in the UK, but tax-free shopping. At the time, if you're an international person, you could come to the UK, buy your clothes, you can claim your tax back. And as the company we worked for, basically we had all the data around it. We had the software to facilitate stores. So we used to work with big brands like John Lewis, Selfridges, Harrods, all those sorts of names, and then did that. And whilst I was working there, I started to do my video stuff on the side. So just, for like little local restaurants, little small businesses, charging like nothing, but just building up my repertoire till it got to a point where I was like, I think I should take the full plunge into doing it.
And was that the point where you decided to start your own company? Because obviously you could have joined a media company yourself and gone along with that, but you decided to start your own one.
Yeah. So I sometimes do look back and think, should I have gone and worked at a media company and got first-hand experience? Because I made a lot of mistakes as I've gone through. And there's a lot of long routes I've taken that certainly could have been a lot quicker. But in honesty, when I first came back from traveling, I didn't think I was qualified enough to go work for a media company. I know I could have started at the bottom somewhere, but I just didn't have the confidence. Yeah, I've been now doing my own little videos and things like that. But at the time, I thought you'd had to go into college, you had to go to university to work in like film, study film, to be able to work in that sector. So, and actually, matter of fact, I just didn't have the confidence to go work in there straight from the off. So I worked in this other company. It was a sort of graduate job. Had some exposure to marketing, had a lot of exposure to do with presenting and trainings. I trained like hundreds of people based upon the softwares that we use and things like that. And to be honest, I think it was probably it was the right decision for me because I learned a lot of people skills. I learned a lot of presentation skills, things like that. And for the company that I used to work for, you had to really put yourself out there. Because I'll give you an example, we'd have to go to a shop has our software that they have to issue these tax forms. There's a lot of rules around it and regulations and things. So we'd basically be tasked with an area. We have to go and train them. So you've got to turn up to a shop, first explain who you are, get them to trust you, be like, let me come around behind your till and talk through that. And then actually get them to book in for a training. It's completely free. So they didn't have to charge for anything. But as you know, retail stores are busy. But that experience was actually like, it's priceless really, because it kind of helped me that when I first started going out and I had to put myself out there, I was kind of like, well, I've done this before.
Yeah. That's what confidence is, isn't it? It's doing a thing over and over again until you get to the point where you've got the evidence behind you and backing up that you can do that thing.
Yeah, mate, 100%. We did a lot of trainings. Every week we'd be in a certain department store to do trainings, and when you're first there, you're like nervous and you're checking the slides, going through, and then after like a few months, you've done it so many times that you turn up there a minute before training's on, set it all up, it's all done, and you can just breeze through it and you know how to go on. And you're right, it is repetition. I think people think of confidence as like a knowledge base, and it is to a degree, but it's also about repetition and doing it. You might know the facts, but if you've not actually spoken it to someone, it's very different to sit and study something compared to actually going to speak to someone out in the wild that you don't know about it.
And just going back to what you were speaking about before, so you said you went traveling for 2 years.
Yeah.
Where did you travel? What did you learn from that?
So it sounds really bad. When I was supposed to be studying for my degree, I would do anything to avoid studying. I would literally sit there and I would go on like betting forums, research like the most obscure football leagues to place like a £1 bet to try and build like accumulator. Or I'd spend like ages researching things just off topic. I would do anything that I could do. And I remember I was studying for my final exams and I was like, do you know what? After this, I need to go away. So I spent ages looking. I was like, I'll go to Thailand. I'll go to Asia. At the time, it was super cheap. It cost me, I think it was like less than £300 to fly to Thailand. But what I didn't realize is my flight, I was flying to Ukraine and then Ukraine to Thailand, which I was like, okay, it makes a bit longer, but it saves me like 300 quid. But it was at the time that one of those flights had been shot down or something like that, which was why the flights were really cheap. But anyway, I had an exam and then I had another test I was studying for. And I was sitting there and I was like, do you know what? After Asia, I really want to go away as well. So I was like, I'll come back from Asia and do you know what? I'll just go to America. So I just booked a two-month return flight from America. I did go to a few more places. So I have family in South America. So I went to go see my family in Colombia, which was cool. I went from there, went to Cuba. You got to remember, this sounds like I'm living a lavish lifestyle. Like when I was in America, I was sleeping on people's sofas for free. I was like crashing with friends. I was doing like everything and anything. And in between, I was actually coming back to the UK, working as a waiter, saving up for a little bit, and then going back out there.
And bringing it back round then, back to the sort of present, or when you got back then. So you started up your company. We've sort of gone through that and the dilemmas of which one to do, whether to work for a company or start your own. Now that you've been running your company for a few years, what do you think your company offers that maybe other media companies don't to businesses who are using your product?
I think that we offer a really personal service. So sometimes we kind of sit in the middle ground. We're not on the lower tier and we're not on the upper tier. You know, we're not doing £100,000 shoots, but we're also not there trying to take the scraps at the bottom. We kind of sit in this middle ground, which can be a little bit hard to sit at. But I always find that with anything, people want to work with good people first. You want a good product or service, but people also want to work with people that they enjoy working with. You know, we've all been there in an office and there's somebody who might be really good at their job, but just nobody likes them and nobody wants to work with them, whether they're aggressive or whether they're mean to people or however it is. So what I try to do with the service that I offer is I try and make sure that clients are fully communicated. They understand what's going on in the process. They're not left in the dark. And this is based upon experience I had with other company, based upon other people's feedback. And I think that if you can give a good product and you can give a great service and you can be the person that somebody likes to work with, then there's no reason why they should work with somewhere else. There's got to be something that's dropping in there. If the quality of service isn't there, no matter how nice you are, they're not going to work with you. If your quality of service is really good, if the quality of your work's really good, but your level of service is terrible, they're not going to want to work with you because they don't enjoy it, or they might only work with you when they really must. So I like to think that the reason that we stand out is that I offer a really personal service with the people I work with. And it's funny because some of my first clients that I work with, I still work to this day, I kind of see them as friends. Like when we have our quarterly meetings or we have our like bi-yearly meetings, it's kind of like a catch up more than it is business. We're obviously going through facts and data and things like that, but it's actually, I see some of my clients as friends, to the fact that we'd go out for a drink or food together and it's not strange, you know?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would hear that and think the personal aspect isn't that important. It's a business. It's an exchange, like one thing, like some money for a shoot, essentially. But yeah, I think that personal, especially once you start getting that service, you will really realize how good that is. And obviously, if you're being that attentive to listen to what they want and how they want it, and if you're just going in with a blanket idea and not giving them that service, then you can definitely see where that would be different. So it sounds like really good middle ground.
Good people like to work with good people, you know, and that's just what I try and offer. I try and offer a great product, but also just a great service.
Yeah. And what have you learned in the time of running your own company? What's that been like for you? How long has it been, actually?
3 years. 3 years in... Well, I think, it would have been 4 years. Yeah, 4 years in October.
Wow, okay.
4 years in October.
And what have you learned in that time?
Oh, man. I realized that when you start a business, you need to be the accountant, you need to be the operations manager, you need to be the marketing manager, you need to be logistics. There's like so many things that naively you don't really think about. I like to think that I'm quite switched on with everything, but even when it comes to like contracts, there's so many clauses that I didn't really know I had to put in. You know, for example, a cancellation clause. It seems really obvious that if someone cancels late, you know, you have to charge them. But if you don't have that in a contract, then they don't know. And you can't expect them to just understand and say, oh, sorry, I cancelled last minute. You're going to have to charge me. Yeah. What other ones did I have? Rights usage.
Okay. Well, like music and stuff like that.
Yeah, things like that. Just even where the content goes, like what's their purpose of use? Is it just they want it for social media? Is it that they're using for a big, large print campaign? Additional costs. That's one thing that really stung me at the beginning, was I charge someone for a project and I'd be like, yeah, that's included, but I never really would lay out how many revisions or things like that. Yeah. There's so many small things. And it's like I was saying at the beginning about, I kind of wish I would have worked at a media company at one point. I didn't have the confidence, but I feel like a lot of these small things I would have learned at the time.
It's almost ironic that you say you didn't have the confidence to work for a media company, but you had the confidence to start your own one.
Yeah. It's weird. I feel like I I'm not going to let myself down,
Hmm.
but I'd feel bad if I let anybody else down.
Okay.
So I feel like when you work for another company, you report to somebody else.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of, whereas when it's by yourself, yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It is a funny one, isn't it? That I wouldn't go work for a company, but then I think it's probably just because I built the confidence. I think by the time I built the confidence, I was like, do you know what? I'm ready to go out by myself. I don't need to go to a media company now.
Yeah.
And the internet's wonderful for learning things. And there's so many resources, YouTube, things like that. I've met so many other people now, cinematographers, video creators, things like that never went to uni, never went to college to study it. They just learned it by themselves. They had a big passion and they just sat in their bedroom practice with friends, practice with local businesses. And
yeah, it's definitely something that, like you said at the start, there's certain careers that you sort of get pushed towards through university. But this is a career where you don't necessarily need that. You just need to understand the technology. You need to understand how the area is moving and be on top of it. And you can learn that from, like you said, all those great resources online. I've learned loads of things just off Googling a YouTube video and following that, and suddenly there's a video out there. But
yeah.
yeah.
And I think the thing is having the confidence to go do it. I always I'm a big believer. I tell everyone, I'm like, what's your passion? What do you love? What would you love to do? And they say, oh, I'd love to do this. I'm like, do you enjoy your job? No. I'm like, well, go do your passion. And I'm like, oh yeah, but what if it doesn't work out? I'm like, but what if it doesn't? What if it does? And I think that's the problem, is that we're not instilled enough a level of confidence where we just say, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. And I said to my girlfriend at the time when I started the business, I gave myself, I think at the time was a year. And because obviously at the time I had monthly clients, so I knew roughly how much I'd be getting, but it was nothing compared to what I was getting paid in my salary. I could barely pay rent.
Yeah.
But I gave myself a year and I was like, right, this year I need to make it to a livable level. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. At the end of the day, what have I lost? I lost a year, but I would have gained so much knowledge from doing it. And I could say I've tried it. I think when you speak to a lot of older people, and I always ask people advice, anyone I meet, I always ask for different advice, or I talk to them about the experience. And if you meet with a lot of older people, a lot of the times they say they regret the things that they didn't do, not the things they did do. And I urge it to anyone. I'm like, try it. Because for me, it might have not worked out, but thankfully it has. And hopefully it does go on for the future. But you don't know at the time. But it's just having the confidence to just kind of take that step in the dark and then see if there's a ground underneath you, or see where it goes.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's so many people who are afraid of failing at something, so they don't try it, but they may succeed at it, they may not. But that's not the actual thing that matters, because even if you do fail at it, like you said, you learn so much and then you improve as a person, and you won't look back on it those years later and think, yeah, that is something I regret. So
yeah.
I totally agree with you. Really resonate with that.
I urge anyone just to try their passion. And I think that was one good thing about lockdown, was that actually a lot of people suddenly realized that, hang on a second, why am I sitting in an office 9 to 5, crunching numbers to go home to play PlayStation, then go work the next day to then blow it all on a Friday night? I think a lot of people came out there being like, actually, no, there is more to life than just sitting in an office all the time. And I did lots of cool video projects with people at the time who wanted to do that. I had one guy, he was like, I want to create a football boot. And he's like, I know I'm not going to beat Nike. I know I'm not going to beat Adidas, but I've always wanted to launch my football boot. And let's do it. So I shot him a video at the time, advertised his football boot. And this was in 2021. Okay. And to this day, he still runs that company. He posts regularly. He's still selling boats. He's got boots. He's got newer models of his boots coming out.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. I had another person who developed these screens that you could use that were mirrors also. He doesn't still do it anymore. So that didn't fail. But at least I remember speaking to him. He was like, always wanted to do it. If I don't do it,
yeah, you don't know what you haven't tried. So I really like that. Talk to me a bit about Reels and TikTok. It's something that you emphasize with people you work with. Why are they so effective?
Social media's in this last few years has definitely been shifting from a still image to a video sort of platform. I get people to think about social media, not to think of it as like an advertising platform. I think a lot of people make that mistake. They think of it as, I need to push out my product, show my catalog on my product, but in fact, it's actually an entertainment platform. Like nobody goes onto Instagram to be sold to. We don't want to. We want to be there to be entertained. And obviously, now as people develop more reels and TikToks, you can sit there and watch little like 1 minute episodes of your favorite creator or your favorite group of creators. It's kind of like a mini episode, let's say, of The Simpsons. Simpsons used to be half an hour, 20 minutes. Now we kind of follow little 1 minute videos to keep us entertained. I always urge any business to go on TikTok because I liken it to what Instagram was 5 years ago, where you used to be able to upload an image and it get like 500 likes, even when you only had 1,000 followers. Now that's like near on impossible. TikTok's getting harder and harder as it starts to go towards monetization, but there's just such a good reach that you can get from it.
I agree with that. I think TikTok, especially, like, I never used it before having this podcast, but since doing that, I remember posting the first video and getting, I don't know, like 200 views when I had like no followers. It's just that it throws it out there and people will see it or swipe, but you can get that reach so easily compared to a lot of other places, right? You can get it out there, and if you've got that hook at the start, you get more views.
Yeah. Do you know what I always tell people to think of as TikTok as well? I think people make the mistake of, and I did myself, is I thought TikTok was all about dancing, you know, little kids doing little things like that, which it's really not. I say to people to not think of TikTok as a social media platform, but think of it as a search engine. So if I want to learn how to do something, if I want a recipe quick, let's say best way to do beef brisket, I go TikTok, search beef brisket recipe. I'm going to get a nice 60-second video. It's going to have the recipe written in there. And within 6 seconds, I can be cooking it. I can pause it. I can play it, things like that. So we'll start to see the shift of people using TikTok less as a social media platform and more of a search engine, which is why when you click on the top bar, it's very clever, their algorithm, their search mechanics and things like that and how it works, which is why I started doing my content on there.
That's really interesting. So, yeah, tell me a bit about your content on there. So it's called Whiskey Amateur.
Yeah.
When did you start that? And
so that's actually only been running for about, I want to say, a year and a half, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years, year and a half. But it's at 10,000 followers, which is pretty good for a little hobby side thing. We started to get more clients asking us about TikTok. And at the time, personally, I didn't use it. My colleague didn't use it. So I couldn't advise people. People were asking more about it. So I kind of set out the task. I was like, right, I want to learn more about the TikTok platform. Now, at the time, I was like, do you know what? It's not the right platform for my business. I don't want to do a business account. I'll do something else, which was stupid at the time. I should have 100% done it in my business. But I was of the group of people that were like, oh, it's just for kids doing dances and things like that.
Yeah.
So I just started working with this whiskey brand. So I was starting to get more into whiskey. I was learning more about it. So I was like, do you know what? I'm developing a passion for this. I'm going to log my journey from zero to hero, from knowing nothing to hopefully learning something, and just log my journey into whiskey. So I was doing whiskey reviews. I was doing things about facts, things like that. And it just kind of took off. It quickly went to a few hundred, to 1,000, to a few thousand. I think my most viewed videos, like 1.2 million views. And I just continued ever since. I learned the platform, and then I was like, do you know what? I actually kind of like enjoy this. It's one of my hobbies. And yeah, a year and a half later or something like that, now I'm in a bit more of a position where I get invited to go events. I get sometimes free stuff sent to me. All from just trying to learn the platform. But again, that wasn't me wanting to be a creator. I didn't want to be a TikToker or anything like that. I just wanted to learn more about the platform.
And you said about going from zero to hero. So obviously you started off with very little knowledge. Where would you say you are now on that journey?
I always say so my channel's called Whiskey Amateur, and people will say, surely it's got changed to Whiskey Professional. And I don't specifically work in the industry, so I never like to class myself as a professional. I'd say I have a good amount of knowledge, not great, good, but I just love sharing it with people. I love talking about it, which is why I still do it. I mean, if we go for a drink and someone asks for a whiskey, my ears prick up and I'm like, oh, what are you ordering? Why? Oh, okay, yeah, well, what can I recommend this? This. And there's a whole little community of whiskey drinkers that I never knew really existed.
Yeah.
That, I'm still part of today.
Good, nice. And you spoke about the opportunities that came up as well from growing that TikTok account. What sort of stuff do you get like offered to go to?
So when I first started the TikTok account, I actually didn't tell anyone about it because in my mind, I saw it as not very professional. Here's me talking about whiskey, not having a very good knowledge. I'm not presenting myself in the best way. Very different to my day-to-day job. I'm a lot more formal when I speak to clients about video production and things like that because the jobs can be quite expensive. But this was my hobby. I'm smelling whiskey. What does it smell like? Whiskey. What does it taste like? I don't know, whiskey. I wanted to make sure I kept them very separate. But after a while, you start to get brands reaching out to me. I remember somebody said they wanted to send me out some samples. And I was like, you sure? Like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. They're like, no, like, no obligation. We'll send you a few samples. If you want to do a video, you want to do a video. So that's really cool. So I had that. So I said to my girlfriend, I was like, my goal, it's not like an actual goal, but I'd love to one day be sent a free bottle. And I got that. Like sometimes now people reach out to me and they say, oh yeah, can we send you this bottle? Like, can we send that? I'm always very straight to people as well. Like if someone says something, my whole channel's about being really sort of like honest and really direct and straight. So I always say that anyone reaches out, I'm like, just so you know, I'm always going to be 100% honest with what I review. And sometimes we might have other people who guest who try stuff. So it's just to make you aware. And 9 times out of 10, someone's all right with that. But I got to go to whiskey festivals, which are cool. But actually the strangest thing was that I actually started to get some work from it as well. Because I started having more of the marketing people from these companies reaching out. I could say to them, hey, have you guys got... have you thought about video production for this event? Have you ever thought about video production for your using your drink in a cocktail? And what I say, oh, let me put you in contact with the company I run, Red Pigeon Media. Send them my email on the other account. And it's strange. So then I started actually speaking more about it and actually my work because it's a passion and we all have passions. I think in the corporate world, everyone likes to think that everyone's just, very like to the T, everyone's very direct, everyone's formal, but actually like on the weekends, we all like to go out, we all like to have a drink, we like to party. Some of us like to go gym, some of us like to run. We all have passions outside. And like I was saying earlier, it took me a while, but you start to just become really friendly with your clients and you come to realize that actually they've probably got a similar passion to you or they like other things like you.
That's a really nice example of how it links in and something that started as a hobby turned out to be actually more clients for you and more work for you and more friends for you as well.
Yeah. And like I said, it's never my goal. Like I do this stuff for free because I enjoy doing it. I'm never like, right, I need money, I need someone to do this. I'm like, you can only do this if you pay me or stuff like that. It's just nice when these things come along. And like you said, we're friends. There's a whole community of people that I met and from all ages, from all walks of life, which I've come really close friends with now.
And what is it about whiskey that drew you to that specifically? Did you like whiskey a lot before, or is it something you just got into at the right time?
I hated whiskey. I didn't drink it at all before. It was I was very much a rum drinker. I liked my dark rums at the time, and it was only from working with this whiskey bar that I suddenly was like, they were like, oh, you've just not tried the right whiskey. I was like, I don't know, I've tried a few, I've just never liked it. And just sampling little bits every time I go and they'll be like, oh, try this, have a little try this, have a try this. And then just like fell in love with it really. Yeah. And I love the whole production, the story of it being made in Scotland. This barrel has been sitting there for like 25 years. Someone's taken it, maybe finished it in another, they maybe transported it into like a sherry cask or a wine cask, finished it in there for another 2 years and then tried it. I tried whiskies from, we went to tasting up in Glenfarclas in Scotland. I tried a whiskey from 1956.
Wow.
And I said to my friends, I was like, this is crazy. The events that have gone on through life that this cask of whiskey has just been sitting there.
Yeah.
People have come, people have gone, people have been born, potentially people have died in that period, and that cask of whiskey's just sat there. Technology's progressed so far. There must have been on pen and paper at the time. Now there's computers logging everything. People, you would have said to someone back then, whoever filled that, oh, you have a mobile phone, you can watch TV on your phone one day. They were like, what are you talking about? I've got the little... and I love that. It might sound romantic, but there's a lot to it, and there's just a lot to learn.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. There's definitely, just from watching your videos and listening to the things you talk about, and I've learned a lot just from that, and there's so much more that I don't understand, but maybe one day I will. I'll keep watching. What have you learned from the start? So from the zero, what have you learned that most people don't know that you can share with us?
About whiskey?
Yeah, about whiskey, sorry.
Older doesn't always mean better.
Okay.
It's a big misconception. The word single malt Scotch means nothing. There's this sort of, I think it's from movies or it's from TV shows where someone goes to a bar and they say, give me a single malt. Or, give me a single malt, give me a Scotch. And all that single malt means is that it's whiskey from one distillery. Mm-hmm. So all different distilleries have different flavor notes. So if you say, give me a single malt, it's like me saying, give me a fruit. Give me a fruit. What fruit do you want? Like a tomato, banana, strawberries, blueberries. Right. There's a myriad of different flavors. So that's a kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that when you get people bullshit, yeah, I only drink single malt. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really mean anything.
Right, okay.
So there's a thing in whiskey called independent bottlers, which we all know there's brands, so like Famous Grouse or Benriach or all these sorts of big names, that they release a whiskey, Lefroy, things like that. Mm-hmm. Now, what an independent bottler is sometimes these whiskey brands, they'll sell casks on to other people. What an independent bottler do will maybe go to Lefroy and say, can I have one of your casks? And they'll buy one of their casks. Now, Lefroy as a company, they will have strict releases that they have to do. They might only release a 10, 12, 15, 18. And it might always be in bourbon cask. I'm just using this example. It's not true. Mm-hmm. What an independent bottler is basically an independent company. They buy the cask, and then they're free to kind of do what they want with that cask within certain parameters. So they could say, do you know what? This is a smoky whiskey. Why don't we put it into a sweet sherry, a cask that's had sherry in before? Let's put it in there for 2 years and let's see if that makes it a nice, smoky, sweet flavor. Now, this might be something that initial company would never do because they're a big corporation. They have rules and regulations which they adhere to, and they have a strict release. But this independent bottler can have that, taste it, bam, and sell it. And what that means is because they've only had that one cask, there will only ever be like 200 to 300 bottles of that whiskey. Once you drank it, it will never exist in that exact form ever again. So I've got some bottles, quite a lot of my bottles are from independent bottlers, and they're from single cask, which means that once you finish that bottle, if there's no bottles in stock, you will never, ever be able to try that exact iteration of that whiskey in that form ever again, which again makes it really like interesting. Also can make it collectible.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet. Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So if someone was like you at the start, maybe, and they thought, I don't really like whiskey, it's not my drink, I'll never like it. Or if someone's open to it and they want to sort of get into it, what are some starters? Is there maybe 3 you could recommend that people could try?
I think the hard thing with whiskey, and why a lot of people put off, is that typically you're kind of taught that you have to have it straight or neat. Sorry. Like you're told you have to have your whiskey and you sip it like that. And that's it. Whereas with rums, it's quite common to have rum and Coke. When it comes to gin, you don't usually just sip gin. You get gin and tonic. Mm-hmm. And most of these other spirits you usually have in the mix or you have in a cocktail. But for some reason, historically, whiskey's been seen as, no, you have to have it neat. It's changing in today's day. The bigger brands are encouraging more people to have in cocktail. But what I'd say to people is that sometimes the reason that people don't like whiskey is because it's a high alcohol strength. You have a beer, it's 4%, something like that. You have wine, it's like 10%, something like that.
Yeah, sort of 10,
but then to go to that to 40%, you don't necessarily taste anything. It's just alcohol which burns your mouth because you're not used to it. So I'd say for anyone who's actually thinking to get into whiskey, rather than recommending a specific product, I'd say try cocktails. Try cocktails first. Treat it like you would a rum. Treat it like you would a gin or something like that, and try it mixed with different cocktails. It can be a highball, which is soda water and whiskey. It can be in a whiskey sour, but try it in different ways, because sometimes it can just be the high alcohol level which puts people off versus actually the flavor. And once you start to taste them in the cocktails, you start to pick out different flavors, and you say, oh, I like the appley ones, or I like the kind of smoky ones, or I like the sweet ones, and things like that. If I had to recommend a product, I usually recommend that if you're going to try something, you don't want to have a whole bottle. So I'd say source out a small bottle. Like, you get lots of brands sell 20 CLs or half-size bottles, because the last thing you want to do is buy a bottle and be stuck with this like 70 CL bottle that maybe gets pulled out once a year at Christmas time. So I'd say look for a smaller bottle size. Personally, I recommend to a lot of people, there's a good whiskey called Benriach 10. You get it in most supermarkets. It's actually usually on special every now and then for about 30 quid. But it's a really good example of what's called like a Speyside whiskey. Very fruity, very light, and something that would go really well in a cocktail.
And I just want to bring it back now to the social media side. So in a more general term, so we've spoken about the impacts of social media for businesses and why they should be using like TikTok and Reels, and how it's gone down that path a bit more recently. Do you think social media as a whole is a positive or a negative?
I think a lot of people would assume that I say it's a positive because I work in it, but I actually don't have a personal social media account myself. I used to once upon a time, but I kind of quickly got rid of it once I started working in it. I have my hobby account, which is my whiskey side, but I don't have a personal account, because I think the one thing about social media is it's very addictive. I think we can all admit we've sat there, on the sofa one time, and you're scrolling, and next thing you know, it's, an hour and a half's passed. And you're like, what have I done? You're like, I've not done anything. I've just sat there mindlessly scrolling. I couldn't even tell you half the things I've watched, And I think that's the one sort of downside of social media, is the sort of addicted side of thing. Yeah. Also, because everything's so short form, I myself as well believe that my attention span is getting lessened, because it's getting more normalized to have information in like 10-second bits.
Yeah, 100%.
And I find myself repeatedly, if I'm watching a TV series, like if it's an hour long, I'm like, I'm going to have to watch it in like 4 quarters, or I'm going to have to watch it in 3/3. I don't want to sit there for a whole hour. I get a bit like angsty, because I'm like, well, why am I sitting here?
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's as a result, partially from social media, just from everyday exposure to that sort of rhythm. It's like anything, you run every day, you start to get fitter, you start to practice stretching every day, you get more limber. And I think that if you constantly watch short form video, I think it can negatively impact you in the fact that your attention span tends to go a little bit smaller. Now, I'm not a doctor. That might not be fact. That's just my opinion from my own experience. So in terms
I think that is generally quite a approved viewpoint, that it does do that.
Yeah. And I don't want to say it's all bad, because it's great to be able to, meet lots of people. There's jobs that's been created from it that never existed. Like 5 years ago, who would have thought there'd been a TikToker's a job? And now people's whole job is just being TikTokers and entertaining. And don't get me wrong, there's people that are super entertaining in there, and it's given people that maybe wouldn't have had a platform before to now have a platform. Singers who might have never been heard before because their music labels would never have listened to them, now have a platform to show their music to the world. So I think that I don't have a one-sided point of view. I have a sort of pros and cons side of views, but personally, I try not to use it for from a personal account. Because I think, you think back in the day, if we'd gone down to, to a pub on a Friday or something like that, I wouldn't necessarily be like showing you a picture like, oh, here, this is what I made for dinner on Tuesday. I went for a run on Wednesday. Here's my shoes. Thursday I woke up and did yoga. Let me just show you this picture of me. I took on my Polaroid of me just sitting in the field like this. It's I don't want to say it's like a chauvinistic medium, but it can very easily like turn to that way, like, look what I'm doing, you know, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, what are you doing? And I think it can be kind of damaging to some people who compare themselves to that, because people only see the good side. Like, people ask me, you know, people talk to me and they're like, oh, do you know what? It's so good you've done your own business and like you're smashing it. I've seen you doing this project, this project, this project. But people don't see like me sitting there on a Saturday night up to like 11 o'clock trying to get work done. People don't see me there like 8 a.m. on a Sunday trying to smash through work because I got a deadline to do, but for Monday. People don't see like when I was first went out and I was trying to get business, I literally just have to get a ticket to a town, walk with my little iPad, say, hey, who does your video content? Who does your social media? Someone says no. Okay, walk to the next business. Hey, I noticed you got a website, but you haven't got any social media. No. And nobody sees that, you know, the days where you're just trawling like rainy days, trying to get a bit of business because all you've got is like £200 coming in a month and you need to make it work. I think it's very easy to see just the positive sides.
100%.
People don't show the negative sides.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with everything you said there pretty much. I think it is a balance. There's definitely positives and negatives, but from a personal point of view, I did exactly what you did. I used to have all of the social media, and then I came off it all probably 5-6 years ago. How did you find it coming off it?
It was actually relatively right for me, because when I came off it was the same time that I was focused on my business. So my time was kind of spent. I still spent time on social media, don't get me wrong, but I was trying to like canvas new businesses and see what was out there and stuff like that. I think for some people, they can actually find it quite hard. You hear lots of people say, you know, I'm going like cold turkey on social media, and cold turkey, you previously sort of associate that with alcohol or drugs or things like that. You don't really, you know, associate that with like an entertainment platform. But I suppose it kind of highlights the sort of addiction that people associate with it and the potential dangers that come with that as well.
Yeah, 100%. It's so addictive, just that scrolling, and that it's just got shorter and shorter over time. Like, we started with TV series and it'd be an hour or half an hour long. Then it went to YouTube videos when YouTube became a thing, and it's then minutes, anywhere like 10 minutes or so. It just gets shorter and shorter. And now, like you said, it's like 10 seconds, and it's just people will flick and they give a video a second to hook them in. Like, their attention span is a second now.
Yeah.
Just because they're just flicking until something is like, yeah, keep me on for a minute.
Yeah, crazy.
And the other thing you mentioned there as well about like, if you were to go to the pub, like nowadays, I definitely see that. And people will be talking about an experience they've been through. And I went out and I did this race or this walk, and rather than just telling you about it, they have to show you a photo of it or something. And I sort of get that, because it gives you an actual visual thing to think about, but it also breaks the flow of conversation sometimes, because you've got to wait for them to go, oh, no, I've got a picture of this. And then they pull it out, and then you're sort of sat in silence for a minute. You take a swig of your beer and you're waiting for them to get this video up. And then you see it and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice. And then it's gone. You sort of, I don't know, it's a weird thing. I don't know if it's just me, maybe.
No, I know what you mean. The other thing that really bugs me is when my friends will sit on their phones when I'm with them, and I got one mate who's so guilty for it, and I call him up all the time. I just look at him and I say, am I boring you? He's like, what? I'm like, boring you? He's like, no. And every time I just say it now, I'm like, am I boring you? And he's like,
yeah,
because it's weird, like you're with someone, but now you kind of constantly want to be doing like this when you're having, and you see it all the time, that, you know, sometimes you see people, like whole groups of people, and they're just like recording that they're having a good time, and then they're straight back on their phone.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, wicked night, yeah, smile, and then upload it. So, you know, it's weird.
It's fascinating. I've seen people at gigs next to me who film a bit of the gig, and then they look back at it and they're rewatching it, they're posting it whilst they're sat there at the gig, missing the rest of this. It just blows my mind. And I actually went to Bruce Springsteen recently, and because of the general age that he would draw to his, there was not a single, well, from where I was sat, I couldn't see any cameras up in the standing section. It was all just people enjoying it. It was so nice to be seeing that, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I digress. So just going back to sort of where we were talking about and where we met. So we met at Wimbledon Tennis Championships. You work as part of a film crew there. What's it like for you doing that and working behind the scenes there, seeing how the back end of that works and capturing that footage?
It's so at Wimbledon, I'm like the assistant's assistant. I'm just the helper's helper, and I openly admit that. But it's just a great experience. Like I said, I didn't go to a production company. I didn't work at like a larger media company. I kind of went into my own and just kind of figured my way. And working with a larger company, it just gives you better, like, invaluable experience. Even just speaking into different ways of what even just speaking to them about the different ways that they work. One of the other guys that's there, he runs a production company based in America, and it's just great picking bits of knowledge from him. I'm always peppering him with questions. He's probably like, oh, not this guy again. But it's just great learning. And you know what it's like at Wimbledon. It's just such a great atmosphere. It's, everyone's really happy. There's lots going on. It's intense for us. You see him, we're running in and out. We're moving here, there. Sometimes things go right. Sometimes things go wrong. But it's always fun working in a team.
Yeah.
And especially when you're not the lead one.
Yeah, a little bit less pressure.
Yeah, the hard thing in all honesty is juggling running the company whilst I'm doing that, because that's every day for 20 days. And so I'm going home, answering emails, trying to send like quotes across, trying to send plans, booking people in, stuff like that in the evenings. And it's difficult to manage, but it's I wouldn't stop it because I love it. I love the Wimbledon experience.
Just to clarify, that's 20 days because you're doing the pre-tournament.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Just for anyone listening who thinks it's only 2 weeks long. Yeah, no, that's good. And it's nice to have that sort of time, I suppose, to pick people's brains who maybe have done it longer as well, and just get those bits of that bit of information for free whilst you're earning and learning as well. So to finish off, I want to sort of ask you where you see yourself in the future, really. So obviously you've got the company, you've got the TikTok, which sort of started as a side hobby, but now is also picking up as well. Where do you see those going, and where do you want them to go? Have you got any goals?
So when I first started the business, I said to my girlfriend, I was like, I got a 5-year plan. And I said, for these first 5 years, I was like, I'm going to have to say no to birthdays. I'm going to have to not turn up to family events. I'm going to have to let people down. I'm going to not be able to go on certain holidays. I'm going to have to basically miss out on a few things just to lay the land. Because for me, as you're growing a business, until you get to the point where you're constantly turning people away, you have to take a lot of jobs, and you might have somebody as a birthday meal booked, but suddenly you get a job to work with Adidas. And then I can't not take that job to work at Adidas. I haven't worked at Adidas yet. It would be lovely. But do you know what I mean? You can't not take it because you don't know where it leads.
Yeah.
One door opens 100 more. So I kind of had this 5-year plan. Now I'm coming to the 4th year. Now it's kind of the final year that I can kind of use that as an excuse.
Yeah, no.
My goal is always to kind of step away from the tools, as they say. It's I used to work with a business coach, and he always said that if you step away from the business and the business stops, you don't have a business. You just got yourself. So I'm always conscious of that. I'd like to get to a point by the end of these 5 years whereby I sit back. I'm more of liaising with clients, booking in clients, organizing the shoots, getting people on shoots, maybe potentially still editing, but actually sending out 2 teams a day. So one team's working somewhere, one team's working somewhere else, because it can be quite manual. You've seen it at Wimbledon, we're carrying a lot of equipment. Not every shoot's like that, but you take it on, take it off. Sometimes you're holding a camera all day like this, you're holding stuff out. It can be quite like toiling on your body. And I'm well aware that it's probably not something that I'm going to be able to manage like throughout my whole career. So I'd like to see in the sort of after the 5-year plan would be kind of to take a step back from manually being on the project, and more overseeing them. Going to visit a site. How are you guys getting on? Do you need help with the setting up the lights first? I'll set you off. And now I need to go in the afternoon to this project over here. That's kind of the end goal of where I'd like to get to.
Yeah, that's a nice place to be, I think. And I like the way you said there about when you started off, you sort of were very open about these things that you are going to have to miss out about. And it's good that you say those, because those are things that people won't see. And next year, if you do that step back and it's a success, people will just look at you and think, okay, he's successful. He's always been successful. Obviously, there's probably not much he had to give up for that. whatever. Whereas they don't know that start and the people you had to let down, the people who things that happened, and it's such a journey. But people only see it once it's at that end point, and they don't see everything that happened to get you there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that you said that. I think that's a really nice place to end today. So I want to thank you again for coming on.
No,
I've
thank
really
you for
enjoyed
having
it. If people want to follow you online and see what you're up to, where can they find you?
So the business is called Red Pigeon Media. We have a website where you contact us. We've got Instagram. We're about to start launching YouTube. So that's the next thing that we're going to do, some behind the scenes on what goes on at our shoots. And then for the whiskey side of things, it's Whiskey Amateur. I think it's Whiskey Amateur on TikTok and The Whiskey Amateur on Instagram. Again, it's very whiskey focused, but it's from zero to hero. You know, I'm very straight. I'm not poncy about things. I do a lot of things, going to festivals, speaking to people, interviewing people, things like that. So yeah, people are interested in that. Also, if anyone actually wants to learn about whiskey, like, I will happily chew your ear off. I'm quite open with just chatting to people about it. I send people like samples of my whiskey all the time, just to, you know, someone's like, oh, I like the look of that. I'm like, well, send me an address. I'll give you a sample of it, you know, because I'm not someone who just sits there and drinks by myself. I like to have it with friends and talk about it and things like that. So yeah, they're the two ways you can kind of get me.
Yeah. And for anyone looking to follow the podcast, you can find us on Instagram at Lonely Chapter Podcast and on Twitter at lonely_chapter. And lastly from me, thank you for listening.